In the previous video, entitled Own Your Privacy, we described the architectural components of your personal information ownership infrastructure, your My Own Home, My Own Office, and My Own Information. But your personal information ownership infrastructure is also a legal structure. We mentioned the personal NDA and license. Now let's show how we establish your information as intellectual property owned by you. Intellectual property takes a number of forms, but for our purposes, the important ones are copyright and trade secret. Copyright covers works, such as music, films, plays, and of course books. Thus, to claim copyright in the information about yourself, it helps if the information takes the form of a work. For that reason, the first step in the personal information ownership infrastructure establishes something called a biographical reference work, basically a collection of information all about you. Your biographical reference work includes the usual narrative text that you'd expect to find in a biography, but as a reference work, it also includes tables. Those tables make it possible for you to reference individual pieces of information about yourself. Why do you need to do that, you ask? Because those pieces of information need to be retrievable by people whom you've licensed to have them. And so your insurance company, for example, has a license issued by you to access your name, date of birth, and current address. The biographical reference work includes a copyright notice, of course, but it also carries the words proprietary and confidential. This information, or any portion of it, is only to be disclosed to licensee and is to be used by licensee only in accordance with the terms of their license. Secrecy law requires more than a notice. The next piece that we'll establish after your biographical reference work is your personal NDA. A copy of your personal NDA must be digitally signed by anyone who wants to use any of your information. All of these documents exist in digital form, of course. You or your licensees can print them out if you want, but it's unnecessary. Each copy of your personal NDA is accompanied by a license for use of personal information, which specifies exactly what items from your biographical reference work are to be disclosed and how that information may be used by the relying party. Any use of the information other than that specified subjects the relying party to a fine and damages, as we described earlier. If the relying party doesn't like that provision or any other part of the agreement, they don't have to sign it. Now, in our authenticity infrastructure, all digital signatures are made by individual human beings. In this new world, there's no such thing as, for example, software code that is signed by Microsoft or Apple. Rather, things are signed by an individual code signing officer, that is, a holder of a professional code auditor's license issued by public authority, who is well compensated for the personal liability assumed. If the personally signed software code allows intrusions in your information home, well, we know who to hold accountable, that is, whose professional license and livelihood to put in jeopardy. Individual accountability is an old principle, one that came to be ignored in the telephone century. We need it back. Desperately, we need it back. And the technology of digital signatures allows us to have it back. Signing officers will, of course, expect their employers to indemnify or insure them. Signing officers will, of course, expect their employers to indemnify or insure them, but their personal signature will be as visible as the signature of the architect and contractor and building inspector on the occupancy permit of the building you're in as you watch this. And of course, your biographical reference work and every personal NDA and license issued by you will be digitally signed by you. Now, we mentioned that the personal information ownership infrastructure protects against threats to your privacy that come from two sources. So far, we've shown how your personal NDA and license, biographical reference work, My Own Office, and My Own Information file cabinet protect record-oriented information about you. But that still leaves a problem. There's another source of detailed information about you, a source that has nothing to do with the record-oriented information we've just discussed. Any system of identity credentials introduces the concern of trackability. And the more reliable, the bigger the concern, unless specific steps are taken to make it difficult or impossible for governments and marketers and any other nosy organizations to know where you've been online. Done wrong, a universal identity credential is a threat to privacy, giving Big Brother a tool by which to track your every move. That concern of privacy activists about universal identity is well placed. Would you want a global village where everyone knows everyone else's business, where a personal identifier made it possible for snoops and governments and cookie clubs to watch your every move, building tables of data all about your actions, including the web pages you look at and the people you hang out with and the things you buy? Accountability in a village of 700 people may cost a certain amount of your privacy, but that kind of accountability without a well-engineered system of privacy protection in a global village of 7 billion people would be a Kafkaesque nightmare. And in fact, that nightmare is well on its way. And with this nightmare, we don't even get accountability. All we get is loss of privacy. Privacy has been thoroughly eroded in both legitimate business and by a new global online mafia. And so we have another source of information about you that must be protected. We must eliminate the means by which nosy, secretive organizations know all about you without even needing to know your name or social security number or other national ID number. Tune into our next video to learn how you can put the personal information ownership infrastructure to work making your identity untrackable. Tune into the video entitled Covering Your Finger Steps.